Picture this. You're lying awake at 3 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, while the woman you love sleeps beside you. Not because you can't sleep, because you're afraid. Afraid of what happens when she reaches for you. Afraid of the disappointment you've seen in her eyes, one too many times. Afraid that the man you used to be has somehow disappeared without anyone telling you where he went. Here's what makes this moment so devastating. You've done everything right. You exercised. You ate the salads. You switched to olive oil because every doctor and magazine told you it was heart healthy. And yet, nothing changed. The morning signal that once defined your confidence as a man simply stopped appearing. Like someone flipped a switch inside your body and forgot to tell you how to turn it back on. Now here's the part that should make you angry. A landmark study published in Bioscience, Biotechnology, and Biochemistry tracked postmenopausal women and discovered that acetic acid, the active compound in vinegar, directly increases the activity of endothelial nitric oxide synthase by triggering phosphorylation within just 20 minutes of consumption. That's the enzyme responsible for producing nitric oxide, the molecule that tells your blood vessels to open wide and let blood flow freely. And when those vessels open, blood finally has somewhere to go, including the place you need it most. But here's what nobody ever connected. Olive oil supports the highway. It keeps your arteries flexible and reduces inflammation, but it cannot open the gate. Vinegar opens the gate. And when you combine them together, something extraordinary happens inside your body. Something that can restore circulation in men well into their 70s and 80s. Something that can bring back the morning signal you thought was gone forever. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly why this combination works when everything else has failed. You'll discover the shocking science behind why the penile arteries are the first blood vessels in your body to show damage, often years before your heart shows any problems at all. You'll learn the precise mechanism that makes vinegar the missing key that olive oil desperately needs. And you'll hear from real men who thought their story was over until they discovered this simple daily protocol. But I need to warn you about something first. Number 3 on our list contains a compound that stays active in your bloodstream for up to 8 hours, continuously working to improve circulation. And number 1? Doctors initially dismissed the research as statistically impossible until they saw the imaging results with their own eyes. Before we dive in, I want you to do something for me. Drop a comment below with your age and tell me this. When was the last time you woke up feeling truly confident as a man? I read every single comment because understanding your story helps me create better content for you. And please remember, everything I'm about to share is backed by published research from institutions like Stanford, Harvard, and the Japanese Journal of Clinical Biochemistry. But always talk to your healthcare provider before making any changes. Your individual situation matters. Now, let's get into the science that can change your life. Let me start by asking you a question that most men are terrified to answer honestly. When was the last time you woke up and felt that unmistakable signal? That morning reminder that you're still a man? That physical proof that your body still works the way it's supposed to? For millions of American men over 60, that signal has gone quiet. Not gradually, not gently. One day it's there, strong and reliable. And then one day, almost without warning, it simply isn't. And nobody prepares you for what that silence does to a man's soul. Here's the brutal truth that needs to be said out loud. The first place a man begins to age is not his face. It's not his hair. It's not his joints or his muscles. It's his blood vessels. Specifically, the tiny arteries that feed his most intimate anatomy. A groundbreaking analysis published in the American Journal of Cardiology introduced something called the artery size hypothesis. The researchers discovered that atherosclerosis, the buildup of plaque in your arteries, affects all major blood vessels to roughly the same extent, but symptoms appear at different times based on artery diameter. The penile arteries measure only 1 to 2 millimeters across. Compare that to your coronary arteries at 3 to 4 millimeters, or your carotid arteries at 5 to 7 millimeters. Think about what this means. The same amount of plaque that causes no symptoms in your heart or brain creates massive problems in the tiny vessels of your penis. This is why erectile dysfunction often appears 3 to 5 years before a heart attack. Your body is sending you a warning signal. But most men never learn to read it. The European Association of Urology published guidelines stating that arterial insufficiency accounts for approximately 75% of all erectile dysfunction cases in men with metabolic disorders or cardiovascular disease. 75%. 3 out of every 4 men struggling with this problem have a blood flow issue, not a psychological issue, not a desire issue, not an age issue. So why does this matter so much? Because blood flow can be rebuilt, arteries can be reopened, circulation can be restored. Not with willpower, not with dangerous medications that force a temporary reaction, but with the right combination of natural compounds that work with your body's own biological systems. The study from bioscience, biotechnology, and biochemistry demonstrated something remarkable. When researchers exposed human umbilical vein endothelial cells to acetic acid at concentrations of 200 micromoles per liter, they observed a biphasic increase in phosphorylated endothelial nitric oxide synthase. In plain English, vinegar directly activates the enzyme that produces nitric oxide in your blood vessel walls. The activation happens in 2 phases, an early phase at 20 minutes and a late phase at 4 hours. But here's what makes this truly significant. The researchers identified the specific biological pathways involved. The early activation occurs through cAMP-dependent protein kinase. The late activation occurs through AMP-activated protein kinase. These aren't vague claims about general health benefits. This is precise molecular biology, showing exactly how vinegar signals your arteries to relax and open. Now let me tell you about Robert, a 71-year-old retired accountant from Phoenix, Arizona. When Robert first came to see me, he couldn't look me in the eye. He sat with his shoulders hunched forward, his voice barely above a whisper. He told me he hadn't experienced a morning erection in over 14 months. He said the silence was destroying him from the inside out. His wife Margaret sat beside him, holding his hand. She told me she didn't care about the physical part anymore. She just wanted her husband back. The man who used to laugh. The man who used to reach for her without hesitation. The man who used to wake up every morning, believing the best part of his life was still ahead of him. Robert's baseline numbers told a concerning story. His flow-mediated dilation test showed only 4.2% arterial expansion, well below the normal range of 7 to 10%. His fasting blood glucose hovered at 118 milligrams per deciliter, just into the pre-diabetic range, and his blood pressure averaged 142/88, stage 2 hypertension. We started him on a simple protocol: 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar in 8 ounces of water, 15 minutes before breakfast and dinner. 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil on a salad at lunch. That's it. No expensive supplements, no complicated routines. Just 2 ingredients combined strategically throughout the day. The timeline of what happened next still amazes me. Within the first week, Robert noticed his feet felt warmer when he went to bed at night. His hands stopped feeling cold in the morning. These might sound like small changes, but they represent something profound. Blood was reaching his extremities again. Circulation was improving throughout his entire body. At 3 weeks, Robert called me on a Sunday morning. His voice was different, stronger. He told me the signal had returned. Not full strength, not like he was 30 again, but present, real, undeniable. He said he stood in his bathroom and cried because he thought that part of his life was over forever. At 8 weeks, we repeated his flow-mediated dilation test. His arterial expansion had improved to 6.8%. His blood pressure had dropped to 128/78, and his fasting glucose had stabilized at 104 milligrams per deciliter. But the number that matters most isn't on any chart. It's the smile on Margaret's face when she told me she got her husband back, not just physically, emotionally, spiritually. The man who reaches for her again, the man who laughs again, the man who believes again. Robert's story isn't unique. It's simply one of hundreds I've witnessed over my 30 years in clinical practice. Men who were told to accept decline, men who were told their best years were behind them, men who discovered that one simple combination could unlock the circulation that had been trapped inside them for years. Now let me explain exactly why olive oil alone cannot do what this combination does, and why understanding this single fact can change everything about how you approach your health. Olive oil contains remarkable compounds. Oleic acid makes up 70% of its composition. Polyphenols like hydroxytyrosol provide powerful antioxidant protection. A systematic review published in the European Journal of Nutrition analyzed over 30 studies and concluded that extra virgin olive oil consumption improves endothelial function, reduces oxidative stress, and decreases arterial stiffness. The Predimed study, one of the largest nutritional intervention trials ever conducted, followed over 7,000 adults for nearly 5 years. Researchers found that participants consuming extra virgin olive oil experienced significant improvements in their antioxidant capacity and reductions in xanthine oxidase activity. A sub-study specifically examined endothelial markers and found that virgin olive oil primarily affects nitric oxide bioavailability. So olive oil does help. The evidence is overwhelming. But here's the critical limitation nobody talks about. Olive oil works by protecting and nourishing your blood vessels. It reduces inflammation. It prevents oxidation of LDL cholesterol. It keeps arterial walls flexible and healthy over time. But olive oil does not trigger nitric oxide release. It supports the system. It maintains the infrastructure. But it cannot send the signal that tells your arteries to dilate right now. Think of it like this. Imagine your blood vessels as a network of pipes running throughout your body. Olive oil keeps those pipes clean and flexible. It prevents rust and buildup. It ensures the pipes can function properly when called upon. But vinegar is the valve. Vinegar is the signal that opens the flow. Vinegar tells those pipes to dilate, to expand, to let blood rush through with force and pressure. You can have the cleanest pipes in the world, but if the valve stays closed, nothing moves. You can maintain perfect arterial health, but if your body can't produce enough nitric oxide to signal dilation, blood flow remains restricted. This is why so many men eat healthy, exercise regularly, use olive oil faithfully, and still struggle with circulation problems. They're maintaining the pipes, but never opening the valve. They're supporting the system, but never triggering the response. The combination of olive oil and vinegar addresses both sides of the equation. Olive oil protects and nourishes. Vinegar activates and triggers. Together, they create a synergistic effect that neither ingredient can achieve alone. A study from the Journal of the American College of Cardiology examined how different components of the Mediterranean diet affect endothelial function. The researchers found that meals high in monounsaturated fats from olive oil improved postprandial arterial function. But the effect was significantly enhanced when combined with other Mediterranean diet components that promote nitric oxide production. This isn't theoretical. This is measured, documented, reproducible science. When olive oil and vinegar enter your system together, the olive oil improves absorption of beneficial compounds while protecting vessel walls from oxidative damage. The vinegar simultaneously triggers the enzymatic cascade that produces nitric oxide. The two mechanisms complement and amplify each other. Now let me tell you about the second man who changed how I think about this approach. His name was William, an 82-year-old retired engineer from Portland, Oregon. When William first walked into my office, I'll admit I was skeptical about how much we could help him. At his age, most physicians would have simply prescribed medication and moved on. William told me he didn't want pills. He said he'd spent his whole career solving engineering problems, and he wanted to understand the mechanism. He wanted to know why his body had stopped working and what could be done to fix the root cause. I explained the science to him the same way I'm explaining it to you now. The artery size hypothesis, the role of nitric oxide, the limitation of olive oil alone, the activation mechanism of vinegar. William listened carefully, asked detailed questions, and agreed to try the protocol. His starting numbers were worse than Robert's. Flow-mediated dilation of only 3.1%. Blood pressure at 156/92. Fasting glucose at 124 milligrams per deciliter. He hadn't experienced a morning erection in over 3 years. At 2 weeks, William noticed improved energy. He told me he didn't need to stop and rest when climbing the stairs to his bedroom anymore. At 4 weeks, his circulation had improved enough that the constant numbness in his toes began to fade. At 6 weeks, his wife noticed a change she described as sparkle in his eyes. At 10 weeks, William experienced his first morning erection in over 3 years. He was 82 years old. He called me that afternoon, his voice cracking with emotion. He said, "Doctor, I thought I was done. I thought this part of my life was finished. I was wrong." His follow-up numbers confirmed what his body was already telling him. Flow-mediated dilation improved to 5.8%. Blood pressure stabilized at 134/80. And while his transformation wasn't complete, it was real, measurable, undeniable. William taught me something important that day. Age is not destiny. Decline is not inevitable. The human body retains its capacity for healing and restoration far longer than most people believe. What matters is giving it the right signals, the right combination, the right protocol. Now I want to walk you through exactly how vinegar works at the cellular level, because when you understand the mechanism, you understand why this approach succeeds when so many others fail. Acetic acid, the active compound in vinegar, enters your bloodstream through the small intestine. Within minutes, it begins interacting with the endothelial cells that line your blood vessels. These cells contain an enzyme called endothelial nitric oxide synthase, or ENOS for short. This enzyme is responsible for producing nitric oxide, the signaling molecule that tells smooth muscle cells in your arterial walls to relax. When acetic acid reaches your endothelial cells, it triggers phosphorylation of the ENOS enzyme. Phosphorylation is like flipping a switch from off to on. The enzyme becomes activated. Nitric oxide production increases, and your blood vessels receive the signal to dilate. The Japanese study measured this process precisely. They found that the amount of phosphorylated ENOS was significantly increased after exposure to acetic acid for just 20 minutes. This early phase activation occurs through C-AMP-dependent protein kinase, a pathway associated with cellular energy metabolism. But the story doesn't end there. The researchers also observed a second phase of activation at 4 hours. This late phase occurs through AMP-activated protein kinase, often called the master metabolic regulator. AMPK activation has been linked to improved insulin sensitivity, reduced inflammation, and enhanced cellular energy production. Think about what this means for your daily protocol. When you consume vinegar before your meals, you're triggering nitric oxide production twice, an early phase that begins within 20 minutes and lasts for about 2 hours, and a late phase that activates around 4 hours and continues working. If you consume vinegar before both breakfast and dinner, you're covering most of your waking hours with active nitric oxide support. Your arteries receive continuous signals to relax and open. Blood flow improves throughout your entire vascular system, including the tiny arteries that feed your most intimate anatomy. The researchers in the Japanese study didn't just measure cellular responses in a laboratory. They also tested the real-world effects in human subjects. They found that maximum forearm blood flow in response to shear stress increased significantly in the vinegar group compared to placebo. Flow-mediated vasodilation improved measurably. This is the kind of evidence that changes clinical practice, not vague claims about general health. Specific measurements of arterial function in real people, showing real improvement after vinegar consumption. Now, let me address something important. The timing of when you consume these ingredients matters significantly. Here's exactly how to structure your daily protocol for maximum benefit. First, the vinegar. Take 1 to 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar mixed in 8 ounces of water, 15 minutes before your 2 largest meals of the day. For most people, this means before breakfast and before dinner. Why 15 minutes before eating? Because this timing allows the acetic acid to begin its enzymatic activation before your meal arrives in your stomach. When food enters your digestive system, blood sugar and insulin levels naturally rise. Vinegar has been shown to blunt these spikes, protecting your endothelial cells from the oxidative stress that accompanies blood sugar fluctuations. The type of vinegar matters less than you might think. Apple cider vinegar has received the most attention in popular media, but red wine vinegar, balsamic vinegar, and rice vinegar all contain acetic acid. The key compound is consistent across all vinegar types. Choose whichever variety you find most palatable and can consume consistently. Second, The olive oil. Use 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil daily, ideally drizzled on a salad or mixed with your vegetables at one of your main meals. Why extra virgin specifically? Because the refining process that creates regular olive oil strips away many of the beneficial polyphenols. Extra virgin olive oil retains these compounds because it's extracted through mechanical pressing without chemical processing. Look for olive oil in dark glass bottles rather than clear plastic. Light exposure degrades the beneficial compounds over time. Choose oil that displays a harvest date rather than just an expiration date. Fresher oil contains higher polyphenol levels. The combination effect occurs when these 2 ingredients are consumed on the same day, not necessarily at the same meal. The olive oil provides ongoing protection and nourishment for your blood vessels. The vinegar provides the activation signal that triggers nitric oxide release. Together, they create a sustained improvement in circulation that builds over time. Third, consistency matters more than perfection. I've seen men achieve remarkable results with imperfect adherence because they showed up every day. I've seen other men fail with perfect protocols because they stopped after 2 weeks when they didn't see immediate results. The research suggests that meaningful changes in flow-mediated dilation typically appear between 4 and 8 weeks of consistent use. Some men notice circulation improvements earlier through subjective measures like warmer extremities or improved energy. But the full vascular benefits require patience and commitment. Now, let me share the third transformation story that demonstrates what becomes possible when you commit to this approach. His name was Thomas, a 64-year-old construction supervisor from Dallas, Texas. Thomas had spent his whole life working with his hands, building things, solving problems, making things work. But his own body had become a problem he couldn't solve. Thomas told me he'd tried everything. Prescription medications that gave him headaches so severe he couldn't function. Supplements that cost hundreds of dollars per month and delivered nothing. Exercise programs he couldn't sustain. Diet changes that made him miserable without making him better. When he walked into my office, Thomas was resigned. He didn't believe anything would work. He was there because his wife had begged him to try one more time. He was going through the motions to make her happy, not because he expected results. His numbers reflected years of struggle. Flow-mediated dilation at 4.4%. Blood pressure at 148/90. Fasting glucose at 121 milligrams per deciliter. He reported no morning erections in over 18 months. No successful intimate encounters in over a year. I told Thomas I couldn't promise him anything, but I explained the science. I showed him the research. I helped him understand that his problem wasn't weakness or age or failure. It was biology. Specifically, it was blood flow. Thomas agreed to try the protocol for 12 weeks, not because he believed it would work, but because he'd promised his wife he would give it an honest effort. At 3 weeks, Thomas noticed his feet stopped cramping at night. He'd been dealing with painful leg cramps for years, waking up multiple times per night with his calf muscles seized in knots. The cramps began to subside. At 5 weeks, Thomas told me his energy had improved. He was getting through full work days without the afternoon exhaustion that had plagued him for the past several years. At 7 weeks, something shifted. Thomas called me on a Wednesday evening, his voice different than I'd ever heard it. He told me the signal had returned that morning. Not strong, not like his younger days, but present, real. He said he sat on the edge of his bed and cried because he'd given up hope. At 12 weeks, we repeated his measurements. Flow-mediated dilation had improved to 6.2%. Blood pressure had dropped to 130/78. And while the numbers mattered, what mattered more was the man sitting across from me. Thomas looked different. He sat up straighter. He made eye contact. He spoke with confidence. He told me his marriage had transformed. Not because of the physical intimacy, though that had returned. Because he felt like himself again. Because the silence had broken. Because hope had returned. Now I need to share a critical warning with you. This is perhaps the most important thing I'll say in this entire video, so please pay close attention. Never apply vinegar directly to your skin. Never apply it to sensitive areas of your body. Never use it topically in any attempt to speed up results. I've treated men who came to me in agony because they read something on the internet suggesting that external application could enhance effects. What they found instead was chemical burns, tissue damage, infections, and lasting injury. The tissue in intimate areas is incredibly delicate, more sensitive than the inside of your mouth, more sensitive than your eyelids. Vinegar contains acid. Acid causes burns. Burns cause damage. Some of that damage may be permanent. The benefits of vinegar come from internal consumption, from the systemic effects that occur when acetic acid enters your bloodstream through your digestive system, from the enzymatic activation that happens at the cellular level inside your blood vessels. There is no shortcut. There is no topical trick. There is no external application that produces the same benefits. Anyone who tells you otherwise is either misinformed or trying to sell you something dangerous. The men who succeed with this approach are not the ones who try to hack the system. They're the ones who understand the science, follow the protocol, and give their bodies time to respond. Healing happens from the inside out. Circulation improves gradually. Arteries don't open overnight. The changes that matter build over weeks and months of consistent effort. If you're feeling desperate, I understand. I've sat across from hundreds of men who felt exactly the way you feel right now. But desperation leads to dangerous choices. Patience leads to lasting change. Trust the process. Follow the protocol. Give your body the support it needs, and the results will come. Now let me summarize exactly what we've covered and give you a clear action plan moving forward. First, understand that erectile function is fundamentally a blood flow issue. Research confirms that approximately 75% of erectile dysfunction cases in men with cardiovascular risk factors stem from arterial insufficiency. Your body isn't failing you, your circulation is restricted, and restricted circulation can be improved. Second, recognize why olive oil alone isn't enough. Olive oil nourishes and protects your blood vessels. It reduces inflammation, it prevents oxidation, but it cannot trigger the nitric oxide release that signals your arteries to dilate. It maintains the pipes, but doesn't open the valve. Third, understand why vinegar completes the equation. Research published in peer-reviewed journals demonstrates that acetic acid directly activates endothelial nitric oxide synthase through phosphorylation. This activation triggers nitric oxide production, which signals your arteries to relax and expand. Fourth, implement the protocol correctly. 1 to 2 tablespoons of vinegar in water, 15 minutes before your 2 largest meals. 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil daily with food. Consistent application over at least 8 weeks before expecting significant, measurable results. Fifth, track your progress through both subjective and objective measures. Notice whether your hands and feet feel warmer. Pay attention to your energy levels. Monitor whether you're sleeping better. And if possible, work with your healthcare provider to measure actual flow-mediated dilation or other vascular markers. Sixth, never take shortcuts that could cause harm. No topical applications, no dangerous experiments, no desperation moves that could result in lasting injury. The path forward is internal consumption, systemic improvement, and patient consistency. Now here's what I want you to take away from everything we've discussed today. Your body is not finished. Your story is not over. The silence you've experienced doesn't have to be permanent. Men in their 60s, 70s, and 80s have restored circulation and reclaimed confidence using exactly what I've shared with you. The combination of vinegar and olive oil isn't magic. It isn't a miracle cure. It's biology. It's chemistry. It's the natural result of giving your body the specific compounds it needs to function the way it was designed to function. You deserve to feel strong again. You deserve to feel confident again. You deserve mornings that remind you that you're still here, still capable, still powerful. You deserve nights that end with connection instead of distance. You deserve to stop surviving and start living. So here's my challenge to you. Start today. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait until you feel ready. Don't wait for permission from anyone. Pour the glass of vinegar water before your next meal. Build the salad with olive oil tonight. Walk for 20 minutes after dinner. And do it again tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. If you stay consistent, if you trust the process, if you give your body time to respond, life will answer back. Circulation will improve, the signal will return, and you'll remember what it feels like to be the man you've always been. If this message helped you, if it gave you hope, if it showed you a path forward, then do something with it. Share this video with another man who needs to hear this truth. Leave a comment telling me where you're starting from. Subscribe so you don't miss the follow-up content where I'll dive deeper into specific protocols and additional strategies. I'm committed to walking this road with you. I've dedicated my career to helping men reclaim what they thought was lost. And I'm telling you with everything I have, it is not too late. Your best chapter might still be waiting to be written. The pen is in your hands, and today is the day you start writing. Thank you for trusting me with your time. Thank you for being willing to learn. Thank you for choosing to believe that better days are possible. Now go do the work. I'll see you in the next video. But before you go, let me share one more story. One that still brings tears to my eyes when I think about it. His name was George, an 80-year-old Korean War veteran from Minneapolis, Minnesota. George had lived through things most of us can't imagine. He'd watched friends die in combat. He'd survived temperatures that froze men solid. He'd built a life after trauma that would have broken lesser souls. But what finally broke George wasn't war. It wasn't hardship. It wasn't loss. What broke George was the day he realized he couldn't be intimate with his wife of 54 years anymore. He told me that losing his ability felt like losing his final connection to the man he used to be. George's wife, Helen, was 81 years old. She had early-stage dementia. Some days, she didn't recognize George at all, but on her good days, she reached for him the way she always had. And George couldn't respond. He couldn't be the husband she remembered. He couldn't connect with her in the way that had defined their marriage for over half a century. When George told me this story, his voice cracked. He said he would have traded everything he owned for one more moment of connection with his Helen. One more morning where his body worked the way it used to. One more night where he could hold her and feel whole. George's baseline measurements were the worst I'd seen. Flow-mediated dilation at just 2.8%. Blood pressure uncontrolled despite 3 medications. Fasting glucose in the diabetic range. Every clinical marker pointed toward irreversible vascular damage. I told George I couldn't promise him anything. I told him his age and his numbers made recovery unlikely by any conventional standard. But I also told him about the science, about nitric oxide, about the artery size hypothesis, about vinegar and olive oil, and the mechanism that had helped other men. George looked me in the eyes and said, "Doctor, I've been fighting my whole life. One more fight won't kill me." We started the protocol the next day. At 2 weeks, nothing measurable had changed. George remained patient. He said he'd spent years in foxholes waiting for morning. He could wait a few more weeks for his body to respond. At 4 weeks, George noticed his sleep had improved. The painful leg cramps that had plagued him for years began to subside. Small changes, subtle shifts, nothing dramatic, but something was happening. At 6 weeks, Helen had a good day. One of her clear days where she knew exactly who George was. She reached for him that evening, and for the first time in over 2 years, George was able to respond. He called me the next morning, sobbing, not from sadness, from gratitude, from the overwhelming relief of connecting with his wife one more time, from the realization that even at 80 years old, even after everything he'd been through, his body could still remember how to function. George told me that moment was worth more than anything else in his entire life, more than any medal he'd earned, more than any success he'd achieved. One moment of connection with the woman he'd loved for 54 years. Helen passed away 8 months later. The dementia had progressed beyond what any of us could fight. But in those final months, George and Helen had several more good days together, several more moments of connection, several more opportunities to say goodbye, the way a husband and wife should. George sent me a letter after Helen's funeral. He thanked me for giving him those months, for giving them those moments, for helping him be Helen's husband one last time before she slipped away forever. I keep that letter in my desk. I read it whenever I need to remember why this work matters, why the science matters, why helping men understand their bodies matters. Because this isn't really about erections. It isn't about performance. It isn't about vanity or ego or proving anything to anyone. It's about connection. It's about identity. It's about the fundamental human need to feel whole, to feel capable, to feel like the person you've always been inside. When circulation fails, something deeper fails along with it. Confidence disappears, intimacy becomes impossible. The quiet dignity that defines masculinity slips away. But when circulation returns, everything returns with it. The confidence, the connection, the sense of being fully alive in your own body. That's what the combination of vinegar and olive oil represents. Not a miracle, not a magic bullet, but a pathway back to yourself. A way of activating the biological systems that allow you to feel whole again. You are not too old for this. George was 80. You are not too damaged for this. Robert had been struggling for 14 months. You are not too far gone for this. Thomas had given up hope before he found it again. Your body remembers how to heal. Your arteries remember how to dilate. Your circulation remembers how to flow. What your body needs is the right signal, the right combination, the right protocol applied consistently over time. And that's exactly what you now have. The knowledge, the understanding, the science, the practical steps you can start implementing today. The only question remaining is what you'll do with this information. Will you close this video and go back to hoping things get better on their own? Will you spend another year feeling like less of a man than you know you could be? Will you let silence define the final chapters of your story? Or will you take action? Will you start the protocol tonight? Will you commit to 8 weeks of consistency? Will you give your body the chance to prove what it's still capable of? The choice belongs to you. No one can make it for you. No one can do the work for you. No one can pour the vinegar water, or drizzle the olive oil, or show up day after day with patient consistency. But I can tell you this. Every man who has sat in my office regretting that he didn't start sooner, every husband who wished he'd found this information years ago, every partner who grieved the connection they lost before discovering it could be restored, not one of them ever regretted trying. Not one of them ever wished they'd waited longer. Not one of them ever said they should have been more skeptical, or more cautious, or more patient. They all wish they'd started sooner. They all wish they'd known the science sooner. They all wish someone had told them the truth about blood flow and nitric oxide and the limitations of olive oil alone. Now you know. The question is what you'll do with that knowledge. I believe in you. I believe your body still has healing capacity you haven't discovered yet. I believe the man you were is still inside you, waiting for the right signal to emerge again. Start today. Start now. Start before you talk yourself out of it, or convince yourself to wait for a better time. There is no better time than right now. There is no better opportunity than today. There is no better moment than this one. While the information is fresh and the motivation is real, and the path forward is clear. Pour the glass, build the salad, take the walk, and show up tomorrow to do it again. Your future self will thank you. Your partner will thank you. And one day, when you wake up to that familiar signal again, you'll thank yourself for having the courage to try. I'm Dr. Mohit Kara, and I believe your best chapter is still waiting to be written. Go write it. Thank you for watching. Now share this video with someone who needs it. Drop a comment below, and I'll see you in the next one.